"It's mine now," my mother-in-law said. The words didn't echo or boom. They just dropped into the room like a stone into still water, sending ripples through every muscle in my body. I froze, my fingers tightening around the stack of papers I had been holding. On the outside, I smiled. On the inside, my heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. It felt like someone had pulled the floor out from under me. And the strangest part, nobody else flinched. My husband stared at the tablecloth. His sister scrolled her phone like this was a dentist waiting room, not the moment my company was stolen in broad daylight. I wish I could say I shouted, that I leapt across the room and grabbed the contracts back. But I didn't. I placed the folder on the polished wood table, careful, quiet. My nails left tiny half-moons in the cover. I nodded once, like I was agreeing to something small. She thought that meant she'd won. She thought I'd let it go. She was wrong. Let me rewind. A few hours earlier, I had convinced myself this meeting was just a formality. A Saturday afternoon, early spring, the kind of day when the air smells like damp soil and the neighbors are dragging lawnmowers out of garages. We were meeting at my in-laws' house, the one with the endless white carpets and the grandfather clock that never ticks quite right. I pulled into the driveway with a pit in my stomach, but told myself it was nothing. Family paperwork, that's all. She greeted me at the door, lipstick perfect, perfume strong enough to sting. "Glad you could make it," she said in a voice that suggested the opposite. Inside, everyone was already seated. My husband at one end of the dining table, his shoulders curled like he wanted to vanish. His sister in a pale pink sweater, tapping through notifications. My father-in-law halfway hidden behind a newspaper he wasn't reading. The only empty chair was directly across from her. My chair. The table was laid out like a holiday meal but stripped of warmth. Neat stacks of papers instead of plates, pens instead of cutlery. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator drifting from the kitchen. I sat, smoothing my skirt more for armor than comfort. I thought maybe she would smile, explain the paperwork kindly, reassure me that the business I had built, the small company I had dragged up from late nights and endless cups of diner coffee, was safe. But even then, there were signs. The contracts placed too neatly, the way she held the pen already uncapped, poised. The slight tilt of her head, the kind of look a cat gives a bird, that hasn't yet realized the window is open. "This is just a formality," she said. Her nails tapped against the folder. "You'll sign here and everything will be cleaner. Easier for taxes." Her tone was syrupy, but her eyes were cold. I wanted to believe it. I really did. I wanted to believe that she was helping, that she actually cared about easing my burden. After all, hadn't she said last year, "Don't worry, sweetheart. Family looks out for each other." Still, my gut twisted. The words sounded like honey, but felt like vinegar. I glanced at my husband. He looked away. That was when I knew. He knew. And then she said it. "It's mine now." Just like that. No hesitation, no apology. As if the company I had started with, less than $800 scraped together from babysitting money and extra shifts, belonged to her because she wanted it. The papers in my hands felt heavier than they should. My palms dampened. The ink smudged slightly under my thumb. Inside, I was screaming. Outside, I leaned back, crossed my legs, and gave her the faintest smile. I thought of all the mornings I had opened that office by myself, the smell of old carpet and burnt coffee, the nights I had stayed until 2 a.m., filing invoices while everyone else slept. And now here she was, claiming it like a prize from a raffle. But I didn't argue, not yet. My silence wasn't surrender. It was calculation. Because what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had already prepared for this moment. I don't know if she realized when she leaned back in her chair and declared ownership of my life's work, that she had just started a fire she couldn't put out. And that's where it begins. I pulled into their driveway that afternoon with the same knot in my stomach I always had before one of her family meetings. The sky was gray, that in-between shade, where you can't tell if rain is coming or if the clouds are just teasing. My car crunched against the gravel, and for a second I just sat there, both hands on the wheel, telling myself it was going to be fine. Family paperwork, remember? Just sign a few things, share some coffee, and head home. At least, That's what I wanted to believe. The house looked the same as it always did. Perfect flower beds, not a petal out of place. White curtains drawn so tight it was hard to imagine any air ever got inside. When she opened the door, she was already in full armor, hair pinned, lipstick a perfect red, pearls snug around her neck. The kind of presentation you give when you're preparing for war but want it to look like a tea party. She smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes, and gestured me inside with a little tilt of her chin. The dining room was staged like something out of a catalog. The chandelier lights glared off polished wood, reflecting neatly stacked papers instead of plates. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, that sharp kind of clean that hides something else. A grandfather clock ticked unevenly in the hallway, its rhythm off just enough to set my teeth on edge. My husband was already seated, shoulders slouched, staring at the edge of the table as if he wished he could disappear into it. His sister scrolled her phone, nails clicking against the screen. My father-in-law sat behind a newspaper, the pages never turning. I slid into the empty chair across from her. She didn't waste time with small talk. No. How are you? No. Did you have trouble finding parking? Just that folder nudged toward me like a plate of food I hadn't ordered. A pen lay across the top, uncapped, ready. In my head, I replayed how I thought this day would go. I imagined her telling me it was all routine, that this was just about taxes or signatures, nothing to worry about. Maybe even offering me coffee, that burnt blend she always brewed too strong. I would smile politely, sign where she pointed, and be done in 10 minutes. Then I'd drive home, kick off my shoes, and start dinner while my husband watched television. Normal, easy. But the longer I sat there, the harder it was to keep that fantasy alive. She didn't meet my eyes. She tapped the pen against the folder like a judge, waiting to hand down a sentence. Every detail screamed that this wasn't about convenience or taxes. This was about control. And yet I still tried to play along. So, I said, forcing my voice steady, what exactly am I signing here? She tilted her head, lips curving into something that might have passed for a smile in dimmer light. Just a formality. It will make everything cleaner, easier for you, easier for me. I almost laughed. Nothing with her was ever easier for me. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of the refrigerator down the hall and the faint sound of traffic outside. I noticed little things I usually ignored. The way the blinds rattled softly when the air conditioning kicked on, the faint scuff marks on the baseboard where a chair had been pushed back too hard. Details that should have been meaningless, but in that moment they felt like clues. I remembered the text she'd sent earlier in the week. Be here at 3 sharp. Bring the papers. No greeting, no thank you, just an order. At the time I brushed it off. That was her way. But now, sitting under the glare of the chandelier, the words echoed like a warning I hadn't heard. I tried to steady my breathing, counting in and out, the way I'd learned to do during long nights at the office when invoices piled up and the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Back then, the stress had felt like a test I could push through. This felt different. This felt like stepping into a trap I had known was there all along. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. You work too hard, you know, she said finally. Let me take this off your plate. Her tone was light, casual, like she was offering to do the dishes. But the weight in my chest told me exactly what she meant. She wasn't offering help. She was announcing ownership. My husband shifted in his seat, but he didn't speak. His hand twitched near the table edge, then stilled. His sister never looked up. My father-in-law turned a page in the paper, though his eyes didn't move. It was like everyone had rehearsed their parts in this play except me. That was when the last of my hope crumbled. I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding, not a moment that could be cleared up with a little explanation. This was deliberate, planned. She had set the stage, gathered the audience, and waited for me to walk in blind. And in that moment, with the smell of lemon cleaner sharp in my nose and the sound of the clock ticking offbeat in the hallway, I knew the woman across from me wasn't just trying to manage paperwork. She was trying to erase me. What she didn't realize was that I had already started planning my next move. This wasn't the first time she had stepped over the line. Sitting there across from her, I could feel every old wound reopen, each one stacking on top of the other, until I understood that this moment had been building for years. My mother-in-law had always been the kind of woman who smiled while cutting you down, who wrapped insults in compliments so neatly you almost said thank you. I thought back to my first year of marriage. I was still figuring things out, still hopeful that if I worked hard enough she would accept me. I had started my company from scratch, just a laptop on the kitchen table and a notebook filled with messy sketches. I remember showing her one of my first contracts, excited because it meant real money, real progress. She barely glanced at it before saying, "That's nice, dear, but don't forget your husband is the real provider." My cheeks burned, but I swallowed it, telling myself she didn't mean harm. Then there was the holiday incident. Christmas Eve, the house filled with the smell of cinnamon and pine needles, and I had brought gifts for everyone, each one wrapped in gold paper and tied with ribbon. She unwrapped mine slowly, peeling back the paper like she was savoring it. Then she held it up a leather planner I'd chosen carefully, engraved with her initials, and she laughed. Not a joyful laugh, not gratitude, but sharp, dismissive. "Oh, sweetheart, what would I do with this? I already have better ones." She passed it to her sister-in-law without a second glance. I sat there smiling like it was funny, my chest hollow. It wasn't just words, though. It was patterns. She liked to control, to remind me at every turn that I was a guest in her world. When my husband and I bought our first home, she insisted on handling the paperwork to make sure we didn't miss anything. Somehow, her name ended up on the deed as a co-signer, even though she never paid a cent. When I questioned it, she waved her hand. "Don't be dramatic. I'm protecting you." Protecting me felt an awful lot like owning me. Even the company had been a target before. Last year during Thanksgiving, while the turkey cooled on the counter and football blared from the living room, she cornered me by the sink. She asked, too casually, if I had thought about putting the business under the family umbrella. When I hesitated, she leaned closer, her voice dropping. "It would be safer with me. Banks trust me. Clients trust me. You're still new at this." My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the serving spoon. I told her I'd think about it, but inside I knew exactly what she was doing. Each moment by itself might not have seemed like much. A comment here, a gesture there, but together they painted a picture so clear I couldn't ignore it anymore. She had been testing boundaries since the day I joined this family, pushing a little further each time, watching to see if I'd push back. And, more often than not, I didn't. I thought keeping the peace was worth more than making a scene. I thought if I stayed patient, if I proved myself, she'd eventually soften. But patience only made me easy prey. I remembered the day I stayed up 36 hours straight to finish a big project, the one that secured a contract worth more money than I'd ever seen in my life. My husband told his parents at dinner that weekend, his voice proud. I waited for a flicker of recognition, a well done anything. Instead, she smiled at him, not me. "You must be so exhausted supporting her little venture," she said. Little venture. My throat tightened, but again, I said nothing. Now, sitting in that polished dining room with contracts laid out like knives, I could see every thread pulling together. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't random. This was the final step in a long game she'd been playing, one where I was always the outsider, always the one who didn't quite belong. She had been planting seeds for years, whispering doubts, claiming authority, making sure everyone in the family saw her as the center of gravity, and I, foolishly, had let her. I looked around that room and saw it clearly. My husband's silence wasn't loyalty to her, it was fear. His sister's detachment wasn't ignorance, it was agreement. My father-in-law's newspaper shield wasn't distraction, it was complicity. They had all chosen their sides long before today, and it wasn't mine. My chest felt tight, not just from anger, but from the weight of realization. All those moments I had brushed aside, all the times I laughed off the sting, had led here. To her sitting across from me, pen in hand, declaring, "It's mine now." And for the first time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt awake. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you realize the game, you can choose to play differently. She thought history guaranteed her victory. She thought I would keep quiet, like always. But history had just taught me something else. She had underestimated the wrong person for far too long. This wasn't going to be another memory I swallowed. This was the day I started writing a different ending. In her chair, satisfied, like a queen who had just declared a victory no one else dared question. The pen rested between her fingers, gleaming under the chandelier light, waiting for me to reach across and sign away years of my work. I didn't move. Not yet. My husband shifted in his seat, the chair creaking under his weight, but he still didn't look at me. His silence was louder than any words. His sister smirked at something on her phone, but I knew she was listening. My father-in-law cleared his throat behind the newspaper, as if that was enough to count as participation. "It's mine now," she repeated, slower this time, her smile sharpening. She pushed the folder closer to me, the papers inside sliding like cards in a rigged deck. My name was printed neatly at the top of the documents, but when I looked closer, I saw the trick. Line after line, she had positioned herself as the majority owner. My name was there only to make it look cooperative, not equal. My chest tightened. My palms were damp against the arms of the chair. Every part of me wanted to shout, to shove the folder back in her face, but I forced my voice to stay steady. "You think this is yours?" I asked quietly. Her eyebrow arched as if I had just told a joke she didn't find funny. "Of course. You should be grateful. I'm protecting the family." Protecting. That word again, the one she always used when she meant controlling. My throat burned, but I swallowed it down. She wanted me to break, to scream, to make myself small. Instead, I leaned back and crossed my legs slowly, like I had all the time in the world. I glanced at my husband. He finally lifted his eyes to meet mine for half a second, then dropped them again, shame pooling in the silence. That told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't going to stand up for me. He never had. She tapped the pen against the folder, her nails clicking like tiny hammers. "Go ahead, sign. Don't make this harder than it has to be." I picked up the folder, turning page after page. Her handwriting was everywhere, notes scribbled in the margins, adjustments made to clauses I had drafted. She had been preparing this long before today. My company's logo at the top of each sheet looked strange now, almost mocking, like it was reminding me of how naive I'd been to think I could keep it safe in this family. The smell of lemon cleaner was sharp in my nose, mixing with the faint scent of coffee from the kitchen. The air felt heavy, pressing against my skin. My heart hammered, but I forced my breathing to slow. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of watching me unravel. "You've worked so hard," she continued, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "But you're tired, aren't you? It's too much for one person. Let me take this burden off your shoulders." I laughed then. Not loud, not bitter, just a small laugh that made her frown. "A burden?" I said. "That company isn't a burden. It's my work, my name, my future. And you think you can just declare it yours?" Her smile faltered for a second before snapping back into place. "You'll thank me one day. Family sticks together." I set the folder back down, sliding it slowly toward her side of the table. My fingers brushed against the edge of the pen. "If family sticks together," I said softly, "why am I the only one who's ever been asked to give everything up?" For the first time, she didn't answer right away. Her lips pressed thin, and the room seemed to hold its breath. My sister-in-law finally looked up from her phone. My father-in-law rustled his paper louder than necessary. My husband cleared his throat, but still said nothing. I pushed the folder back toward her, but I didn't sign. I stood instead, my chair scraping against the floor. "If you want it so badly," I said, my voice steady now, "then keep it, but don't pretend it's yours because you earned it. Everyone in this room knows the truth." Her face flushed, the red climbing from her neck to her cheeks. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out right away. For once, she was off script. I picked up my bag from the floor and slung it over my shoulder. My legs felt heavy, but each step toward the door grew lighter. The clock ticked again, loud and uneven, like it was keeping time for me. At the doorway, I turned back just long enough to meet her eyes. "You think you've won?" I said. "But you've only just started losing." And then I walked out, leaving the polished dining room, the papers, and the silence behind me. What none of them knew was that I had already filed paperwork of my own weeks earlier, quietly, carefully. She thought today was the end of my story. She had no idea it was only the beginning. The air outside felt colder than it should have. I stood on the porch for a moment, bag over my shoulder, trying to steady my breathing. Behind me, I could still hear the muffled sound of voices rising, her voice sharp, my husband's voice low, my sister-in-law giggling nervously. I didn't turn back, not once. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I walked to my car, each step heavier with anger but lighter with resolve. When I shut the car door, the silence hit me like a wall. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, not from fear, but from the weight of years pressing down at once. For so long I had let her decide who I was in this family. The obedient daughter-in-law. The one who worked hard but never complained. The one who smiled when dismissed. That version of me had just walked out of her house, and she didn't even realize it. My phone buzzed before I even started the engine. A message from my husband. "Come back inside. We can talk this through." My lips curled into a bitter smile. Talk it through? That was his specialty, smooth words, no action. I typed back 3 words. It's already done. Because the truth was, I had prepared for this. Every late night I spent poring over contracts. Every uneasy gut feeling I ignored had finally convinced me to protect myself. Weeks ago, I met with an attorney downtown, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper memory. Together, we drew up documents that safeguarded my company. On paper, I was no longer the sole owner. I had transferred shares into a trust, one that couldn't be touched by anyone outside of it, not even family, especially not her. The plan wasn't revenge. It was survival. I knew she would try something, maybe not today, maybe not this year, but eventually. And when she did, I wanted to be ready. Sitting there at her dining table, I had nearly broken. But walking out, I realized she had fallen straight into the trap she thought she had set for me. By the time I pulled into my own driveway, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, messages, a voicemail from her, voice dripping with false sweetness. I think we misunderstood each other. Come back, dear, we'll figure this out together. I didn't even listen to the rest. I deleted it. That evening, my attorney called. They tried to file transfer papers this afternoon, she said. But the system flagged it. They don't own what they think they own. I exhaled, the tension in my chest loosening for the first time all day. And that's when the shouting started. From outside my window, I heard tires screech against the curb. My husband and his mother stormed up the walkway, voices sharp enough to cut through the glass. She banged on the door, yelling my name like I was a teenager who had stayed out past curfew. I didn't answer. Instead, I sat on the couch, calm, almost eerily so, listening as they argued with each other on my porch. She accused him of weakness, of not handling me. He begged her to calm down. The words tangled into one loud mess until finally, their voices trailed off, and the sound of tires squealing again filled the night. I thought it was over. But the next morning, I opened my laptop to find an email from one of my clients. Subject line: urgent concern about ownership change. Attached was a copy of a message they had received. My mother-in-law had actually contacted them, claiming she was now in charge of the company, that I had stepped aside, that all contracts should be directed to her. I stared at the screen, my pulse spiking. The audacity was almost laughable. Almost. I forwarded everything straight to my attorney. Within hours, she sent a formal cease and desist letter, with legal language so sharp it could cut steel. And just like that, the client called back, apologizing for even doubting me. "We know who built this," they said. "We're with you." That night, my phone rang again. Her number. I didn't pick up. Then my husband's. Then his sister's. Finally, a message appeared. "You'll regret this. Family doesn't turn on family." I read it twice, then set the phone down. My hands were steady now. My voice, when I whispered to myself, was steady too. Family doesn't destroy family either. The house was quiet. For once, I liked it that way. I brewed myself a cup of coffee, strong and bitter, and sat by the window. The street outside was calm, the kind of calm you don't notice until you've survived a storm. What she never understood, what she probably never will, is that she didn't just try to take my company, she tried to erase me. And in trying, she revealed exactly who she was to everyone else, not just to me. And maybe, just maybe, she realized she had already lost something bigger than paperwork. The days that followed moved slowly, like time itself was testing me to see if I would break. Every morning, I woke up to the same routine coffee brewing in the kitchen, my desk stacked with files, the hum of my laptop coming to life. Yet something inside me had shifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for her next move. I had already seen it, survived it, and blocked it. She kept trying, of course. The calls didn't stop. Some were frantic, others were sweet, the kind of sugar-coated poison she had always used. "We can fix this, dear. Just sign what's left." Or, "You'll thank me when you're older." When that failed, her tone changed. "You're destroying this family. Do you want to be responsible for that?" Each message was a different mask, but I had learned to look past the costumes. I didn't answer a single one. My husband came by once, standing on the porch like a stranger. He didn't knock. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, staring at the door he used to unlock with ease. I watched from the window, hidden by the curtain. His shoulders looked heavy, his eyes tired. For a moment, I almost opened the door. Almost. But then I remembered the silence at that table, his eyes avoiding mine when she declared my company hers. I remembered how he had let her speak for both of them. And I knew the man standing outside wasn't here for me, he was here for her. After a while, he turned and left. The gravel crunched under his shoes, fading into nothing. Work became my anchor. My clients rallied behind me, some even calling to say they admired how I stood my ground. I hadn't told them everything, but they had heard enough through whispers and rumors. In a way, her attempt to humiliate me had only spotlighted what I had built. People were talking, but this time the story wasn't about her, it was about me. Late one night, after filing the last set of invoices, I sat in my office and thought back to the girl I used to be. The one who had smiled through insults, who had swallowed every slight, who thought being quiet was the same as being strong. She had worked so hard to be accepted, and in doing so, she almost lost herself. That girl deserved better. And I promised myself I would never let her down again. The hardest part wasn't the business, it was the quiet. The absence of family dinners, of holiday invites, even of the messy chaos that used to fill birthdays. There were moments I caught myself wondering if I'd gone too far, if maybe I should have signed, just to keep the peace. But peace built on silence is no peace at all. It's just surrender with a prettier name. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting before I even opened it. Sharp, elegant strokes, like she carved the ink into the paper. Inside was a single page. "You'll regret this. Families always find their way back, and when you come crawling, don't expect me to welcome you." I folded it once, then dropped it into the trash without reading it again. That night, I sat outside on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders. The air was crisp, carrying the smell of fresh-cut grass and wood smoke from somewhere down the street. For the first time in a long time, I felt light, not happy, exactly just unburdened. I didn't have to win against her, I just had to stop letting her win against me. I thought about the words she had said. "It's mine now." How sure she had been, how final it sounded. But now I understood something I hadn't before. She could claim papers, signatures, even people if they let her, but she could never own what I had built inside myself. The work ethic, the resilience, the refusal to bend any further. Those were mine, always. Weeks turned into months. The calls slowed, then stopped. My husband never came back. Holidays passed quietly, just me and a few friends who had long since become my chosen family. There were no grand confrontations, no dramatic reconciliations, just silence, where there used to be noise. And in that silence, I found room to breathe. One afternoon, while cleaning my office, I came across the first notebook I had ever used to sketch out the company. The pages were wrinkled, smudged with old coffee stains, full of ideas scribbled at midnight. I flipped through them slowly, my fingers tracing the messy handwriting. I had done this. Me. Not her, not them. And nothing they did could erase that. I don't know if she ever realized what she truly lost, It wasn't just a company. It wasn't just a daughter-in-law she couldn't control. It was the illusion that her power was absolute. She had ruled her house like a queen for years, but queens only stay in power as long as people bow. And I wasn't bowing anymore. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I whispered to myself, "It's still mine." Not the company, not just the name on paper, but the life I had chosen to protect. And for the first time, those words didn't feel like defiance. They felt like peace.